In my previous installments, I claimed that I would be exploring the story of Blood Omen 2 in the fourth part of my series. However, in my ignorance, I did not recognize that though Blood Omen 2 occurs chronologically between Blood Omen 1 and Soul Reaver 1, the events are only possible following the paradox that was created in Soul Reaver 2. Therefore, in order to fully understand the ramifications of Raziel's choices, it would be better to follow the games in the order that they were released, rather than what I had intended. I hope you understand why I'm changing the order, and hope you'll forgive my ineptitude. In the previous installment, we covered the following. The Vampire-Hilden War, a feud between the ancient vampires and the Hilden that ended in the Hilden's banishment from the material plane, and the cursing of the vampires. The ancient vampires were devout worshippers of the Elder God, dubbed the Wheel of Fate, responsible for the turning of the wheel and the cleansing cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. The rise of the Zephon. The pillars were the ancient vampires' weapon that they used to cast out the Hilden. The pillars were tied to an oligarchy of 9 sorcerers, known as the Circle of 9. Each member of the circle was attuned to the principle of the pillar that they served. Because of the Hilden's curse, the ancient vampires began to dwindle in number so that the pillars chose human guardians instead. The vampires then forced their gift upon the humans, who saw this as a threat to their race and so rebelled. The circle, now consisting of human guardians, created the Order of the Zephon to purge the vampire plague from the world. They were led by the conflict guardian Malik, who recruited powerful commanders to aid him. As the Zephon continued their purges of the vampires, they provoked the wrath of the vampire Vorador, and of the wraith Raziel from the future. Vorador exacts his revenge by slaughtering 6 of the circle, the corruption of the circle. With the Zephon gone and the circle broken, new guardians were chosen. Mortanius is then possessed by a dark entity and murders the balance guardian Ariel, sending her lover Nupraptor into a grief-filled madness. Nupraptor turns his anger onto the other members of the circle, corrupting their minds with his psychic powers. This also corrupts the pillars, which were tied both to their respective guardians and to the lands of Nosgoth. Nupraptor's psychic scream also corrupts the unborn Kain, who was chosen as the new balance guardian following Ariel's murder. Kain's legacy. Mortanius recognizes what he has done, and plans to restore the circle by purging them so that new guardians can be chosen. He decides to use Kain, the newly appointed balance guardian, to facilitate this. Mortanius hires assassins to murder Kain, so that when Kain enters the underworld, he was poised to promise him a chance at revenge. Mortanius grants him his wish, giving him a second life, but one as a vampire. Kain then exacts his revenge, but must now live on as an undead creature. Mortanius advises him to seek the Pillars of Nosgoth, where he will find his salvation. Kain agrees, and at the Pillars he finds the spectre of the murdered balance guardian Ariel. She informs him that in the cleansing of the circle he would find solace, and so he agrees and embarks on a journey to purge the circle. The second vampire purge. King William's death at the hand of the vampire Kain allowed Mobius, the time streamer, to justify the revitalization of the vampire purges. No one knew that King William would later become the nemesis, and so they viewed the vampires as a scourge that killed their beloved king. When Kain returns to the future, he finds the consequences of his actions in full effect. Vampires were being purged all across the country, and there even came the death of the legendary vampire Vorador. All of this was part of Mobius' design. Kain refuses the sacrifice. Kain continues to purge the circle, until at last it was revealed that he was the final guardian. Only through his death will the pillars be restored. Kain refuses the sacrifice, causing the collapse of the Pillars of Nosgoth. The pillars were inextricably tied to the health of the land, and so Nosgoth would begin to deteriorate in time. Kain, however, fashions the fallen balance pillar as his throne, from which to rule over his new empire.
Kain is deified. The clans tell tales of him. Few know the truth. He was mortal once, as were we all. However, his contempt for humanity drove him to create me and my brethren. I am Raziel, firstborn of his lieutenants. I stood with Kain and my brethren at the dawn of the Empire. I have served him a millennium. Over time, we became less human and more divine. Kain would enter the state of change and emerge with a new gift. Some years after the Master, our evolution would follow, until I had the honor of surpassing my lord. For my transgression, I earned a new kind of reward. Agony. There was only one possible outcome. My eternal damnation. I, Raziel, was to suffer the fate of traitors and weaklings, to burn forever in the bowels of the Lake of the Dead. Cast him in. Tumbling, burning with white-hot fire, I plunged into the depths of the abyss. Unspeakable pain, relentless agony. Time ceased to exist. Only this torture and a deepening hatred of the hypocrisy that damned me to this hell. An eternity passed, and my torment receded, bringing me back from the precipice of madness. The descent had destroyed me, and yet I lived.
Raziel, you are worthy.
Raziel would enter the Sanctuary of the Clans, the name Kain coined to be the center of his empire. He bows before Kain and his brethren, and reveals his newest evolutionary development, newly fledged wings, signifying that he had surpassed Kain. In a seemingly egotistical act, Kain tears the bones from Raziel's shoulders, and has Terrell and Dumah cast him into the Lake of the Dead, a large whirlpool that is seemingly endless. The water of the lake burns Raziel's vampiric flesh like acid, destroying his body. After enduring relentless agony for some 500 years, Raziel's torment finally recedes, and he awakens in the Abyss, now a creature of the spectral realm. A voice speaks to him, rumbling in the depths of that chamber, a forgotten god, who had long since abandoned his followers. The Elder God claims that Raziel is worthy, and states that his resurrection was to serve the Elder God as a Reaver of souls, and to enact his revenge on Kain, thus restoring Nosgoth. Tempted by the opportunity to avenge himself, he silently consents to pursuing this quest for vengeance. Raziel leaves the underworld to embark on his new journey, and see what has become of the world.
I know you, Raziel. You are worthy.
What madness is this? What pitiful form is this that I have come to inhabit? Death would be a release next to this travesty.
You did not survive the Abyss, Raziel. I have only spared you from total dissolution.
I would choose oblivion over this existence.
The choice is not yours.
I am destroyed.
You are reborn. The birth of one of Kain's abominations traps the essence of life. It is this soul that animates the corpse you lived in. And that, Raziel, is the demise of Nosgoth. There is no balance. The souls of the dead remain trapped. I cannot spin them in the wheel of fate. They cannot complete their destinies. Redeem yourself. Or if you prefer, avenge yourself. Settle your dispute with Kain. Destroy him and your brethren. Free their souls and let the wheel of fate churn again. Use your hatred to reave their souls. I can make it possible. Become my soul reaver, my angel of death. These portals are your conduit between the spectral and material realms. With their aid, you may gather matter and will yourself to become manifest in the physical world.
What are these creatures?
Do you not recognize them? They are the children of your brother, Dumah.
That's impossible. These foul-scuttling beasts could not be kin of our high blood.
Do you suppose that time stood still for you, Raziel? Much has changed since you passed from the world of men.
I knew my opponent's weaknesses, having suffered them myself. Physical wounds are fleeting. Vampire's immortal flesh begins to close as soon as it is cleaved. Vampires need only fear those wounds that impale or inflame. Water scorches like acid, and fledglings are devastated by sunlight's touch. I would have to modify my tactics to suit my foes. My God! The sanctuary of the clans reduced to ruin. Beyond these walls lay the pillars of Nosgoth, the seat of Kain's empire. How humble it now appeared, collapsing into the dust of its former magnificence. And yet, I had only just emerged. In the instant between my execution and resurrection, centuries had apparently passed.
This world is wrecked with cataclysms. The earth strains to shrug off the pestilence of Kain's parasitic empire. The fate of this world was preordained in an instant by a solitary man. Unwilling to martyr himself to restore Nosgoth's balance, Kain condemned the world to the decay you see. In that moment, the unraveling began. Now it is nearly played out. Nosgoth teeters on the brink of collapse. Its fragile balance cannot hold.
Raziel finds a way into the material realm, and looks upon the world to find that Nosgoth has changed significantly for the worse since his execution. He encounters Dumah's vampire clan descendants, who are all hideously deformed beyond belief. Then, he gazes upon the sanctuary of the clans crumbling into ruin. The way inside is barred to him, and so he would have to find another means of entry. Returning to the Lake of the Dead, Raziel gathers his bearings, and determines the direction of his own clan's territory.
This, at least, had remained constant. The endlessly swirling vortex of the abyss. My tomb, and the womb of my rebirth. Though much of Nosgoth's landscape had changed, these cliffs gave me my bearings. My clan territory was to the west. I was anxious to see how my descendants had fared during the centuries of my absence.
He takes off in that direction, but finds it utterly desolate when he arrives.
Utter desolation. My once proud kin wiped from this world like excrement from a boot. I knew the hand that wrought this deed.
Raziel then infiltrates a necropolis inhabited by Melchiah and his clan. Within the depths of that forsaken place, he finds Melchiah himself, who was devolved into a horrible creature, unable to sustain his own flesh.
They gnawed upon their victim's carcass like dogs. This charnel house bore the unmistakable marks of Melchiah's clan. To what depths had our dynasty plummeted if these ghouls were the descendants of my high-born brother? Were they so debased as to recruit fledglings from the desiccated corpses here interred? My brother Melchiah was made last, and therefore received the poorest portion of Kain's gift. Although immortal, His soul could not sustain the flesh, which retained much of its previous human frailty. This weakness, it seemed, was passed on to his offspring. Their fragile skins barely contained the underlying decay.
Show yourself, creature!
Do you not recognize me, brother? Am I so changed?
Melchiah?
Yes, brother. You should have stayed where the Master sent you, Raziel. You will find Nosgoth less pleasant than you remember.
What has become of my clan? Answer me, little brother, or I will beat an answer from your horrid lips.
Everyone is afraid, sibling. You awake to a world of fear. These times of change are so unsettling. You think I feel no revulsion for this form? Do you believe for a moment that our Lord would risk his empire upon an upstart inheritance?
Enough riddles. What are you saying?
You are the last to die.
Tell me, Melchiah, where can I find Kain?
The Master is beyond your reach, Raziel. He makes himself known when he sees fit, not when commanded. Done well, Raziel.
Am I reduced to this? A ghoul? A fratricide?
Elevated, Raziel, not reduced. Consuming Melchiah's soul has endowed you with a new gift. Insubstantial barriers such as these are no impediment to you in the spectral realm. Will yourself to pass through, and you shall.
After Raziel defeats Melchiah and absorbs his soul, he now has the means to enter the Sanctuary of the Clans. Within, he finds Kain at the ruined pillars of Nosgoth.
Raziel.
Kain!
The Abyss has been unkind.
I am your creation, Kain. Now, as before, you criticize your own work. What have you done with my clan, degenerate? You have no right.
What I have made, I can also destroy, child.
Damn you, Kain! You are not God! This act of genocide is unconscionable! Conscience? You dare to speak to me of conscience? Only when you have felt the full gravity of choice should you dare question my judgment. Your lifespan is a flicker compared to the mass of doubt and regret that I have borne since Mortanius first turned me from the light. To know that the fate of the world hangs dependent on the advisedness of my every deed? Can you even begin to conceive what action you would take in my position? I would choose integrity, Kain.
Look around you, Raziel. See what has become of our empire. Witness the end of an age. The clans scattered to the corners of Nosgoth. This place has outlasted its usefulness. As have you.
The Soul Reaver, Kain's ancient blade, older than any of us and 1,000 times more deadly. The legends claimed that the blade was possessed and thrived by devouring the souls of its victims. For all our bravado, we knew what it meant when Kain drew the Soul Reaver in anger. It meant you were dead.
The blade is vanquished. So it unfolds. And we are a step closer to our destinies.
Kain is not surprised to see Raziel, and in fact seemed to have been expecting him. Kain enrages Raziel further by admitting to the annihilation of his clan. Raziel begins to criticize him, and Kain retorts, resulting in a clash between the two. Kain overpowers Raziel and attempts to strike him down with the indomitable Soul Reaver. The Reaver Blade, a sword that thrives by devouring the souls of its enemies, strikes Raziel and shatters. With the legendary blade destroyed, Kain leaves with a strange glint of satisfaction reflected in his eyes.
I swore I saw a glint of satisfaction in Kain's eye when the Soul Reaver was destroyed. I did not understand the game that Kain was playing, but I knew the finishing move.
From this moment and ever afterward, you and this blade are inextricably bound. Soul Reaver and Reaver of Souls, your destinies are intertwined. By destroying the sword, you have liberated it from its corporeal prison and restored it to its true form, a wraith blade, its energy unbound. No longer a physical blade, it can only manifest itself in the material realm when your strength is fully restored. Once manifest, it will sustain you.
What are you, little soul? Another of Kain's creatures come to taunt this bound spectre.
I did not intend to disturb your rest.
Rest. A body is needed for sleep. Flesh and bones are required to recline. No, child. All I may do is watch and remember, ceaselessly conscious as this wretched world's history unfurls. Ghastly past, insufferable future, are they one and the same? Am I always here?
How have you come to haunt these pillars?
Kain refused the sacrifice. The Pillar of Balance, corrupted to its core, stands as a monument to his blind ambition. Now these pillars serve only to bind me here, my prison and eternal home, thanks to the avarice of your master, Kain.
That bastard can claim no allegiance from me.
Then we share a common foe, Raziel. Return here when you have need. Ariel remembers what others have forgotten. Far in the eastern mountains, a stifled titan stands in mute surrender, unwilling host to a parasitic swarm.
Your brother Zephon's keep lies far to the east, beyond the ruins that greeted your first exit from the underworld. He and his brood have cocooned themselves in a derelict cathedral, having murdered its human guardians. Armed with the Soul Reaver, you may gain entry where your path was previously blocked.
Raziel enters the spectral realm to find that the soul-devouring entity trapped within the Reaver, the Wraith Blade, has been freed. As he touches it, something strange happens. The Wraith Blade binds itself to him, becoming his symbiotic weapon. Soon after this occurs, Raziel meets the spirit of the murdered Balance Guardian Ariel, who offers him guidance on his quest. Heeding her and the Elder God's advice, Raziel travels to the Silence Cathedral and finds that Zephon's brood have nested themselves within.
Once a testament to mankind's defiance of Kain's empire, this towering cathedral now stood derelict. The humans who worshipped here, dead for centuries. Its architects conceived this tower as a holy weapon against the vampire menace, a colossal instrument of brass and stone. The cathedral's pipes, once tuned to blast a deadly hymn, now stood silent, and these vacant spaces whistled their impotence.
Zephon's descendants have devolved into arachnid-like creatures, and their master was no different. Raziel ascends to the spires of the cathedral, and there finds a great insectoid monstrosity, whose body has melded into the enclave in which it dwells. This creature is Zephon, another of Raziel's former brethren.
Prodigal son, there is no returning for you, Raziel.
Zephon, your visage becomes you. It's an appropriate reflection of your soul.
And you are not his handsome Raziel anymore. His precious firstborn son turned betrayer. You have missed so many changes, little Raziel. Look around you. See how the human's weapon of destruction has become my home. Indeed, my body. A cocoon of brick and granite from which to watch a pupating world.
A crevice in which to cower, only scuttling from the shadows to devour a victim already ensnared in your cowardly trap. But you've made the mistake of leaving me unbound, and it is you who must succumb to my will.
Will, instinct, reflex action. The insect mind finds little difference. I warn you, brother. As my stature has grown, so it is matched by my appetite. Step forward, morsel.
Consuming Zephon's apostate soul has bestowed on you a new gift. Like his vampire spawn, you are able to scale certain walls which are otherwise impassable, but only in the physical realm. In the spirit world, these insubstantial edifices will not support you. In the mountains beyond the pillars, Nosgoth's cataclysms have exposed an ancient crime. Endowed with Zephon's soul, you may now progress where your path was hitherto impeded.
Raziel purges the beast with fire, and using his power can now continue his quest. Continuing onward on his quest for knowledge, truth, and revenge, he discovers the tomb of the Seraphon. Infiltrating the crypt, he makes a shocking discovery.
The ancient tomb of the Seraphon, once impenetrably sealed, now ravaged by Nosgoth's upheavals, its mysteries lay exposed. In the time of Vorador, centuries before Kain was made, the Seraphon warrior priests waged a merciless war against the vampire tribes of Nosgoth. Emboldened by righteousness, they committed unspeakable and indiscriminate acts of violence, massacring fledglings and ancients alike. They They decimated entire bloodlines in mere decades. Now their husks lay here, murderers enshrined. As I pulled the stone free, a sigh of sepulchral air escaped the inner chamber. I was not prepared for what lay beyond this threshold. These crypts, defiled caskets of Seraphim saints, bearing my brothers' names, and my own. The irony of Cain's blasphemous act rushed in on me with the crushing force of revelation. Were my hands not as bloody as these? Worse, I had spilled the blood of my brothers, these very comrades whose tombs lay ravaged before me.
Yes, Raziel, you were a Seraphon, born of the same force that all but destroyed your race. Before the dawn of the Empire, you were chosen. Kain, Nosgoth's solitary self-declared monarch, plundered this tomb and raised you from these crypts. Breathing his vampiric gift into your defiled corpses, he resurrected you as his favored sons.
To Raziel's horror, he finds that the crypt was designated for him and his brothers, and now the cruel irony of Kain's scheme becomes apparent. Kain revived the elite members of the Seraphon to serve him as his vampire sons. They were too long dead to remember their Seraphon roots when resurrected, and remained completely ignorant of their heritage. Raziel begins now to doubt the claim that the vampires were noble and pure, and that the Seraphon were murderers, thinking that Kain had flipped history on its head and skewed the truth. Moving on, Raziel ventures through a secret passage under the crypt, where he is accosted by the Tomb Guardian, a descendant of the vampire Torel. He overpowers this new enemy and gains the power of telekinesis. He then moves on to a drowned abbey, inhabited by Rahab and his clan. According to the Elder God, Rahab and his children have mutated into amphibians, overcoming their vampiric vulnerability to water. At the heart of the abbey is Rahab himself, evolved into a merman-like creature. Raziel divulges what he has learned about their past lives as Seraphon elites, but Rahab is not fazed, and is still entirely loyal to Kain, and so attempts to kill Raziel.
Rahab, you have adapted well to your environment, for one so maladjusted.
Do not mock me, Raziel. You of all of us should respect the power bestowed by a limitation overcome. Kain said you would come.
You speak with the murderer?
You would do well to mind your blasphemous tongue.
What more did he tell you?
That you would destroy me.
I will indeed. But tell me, before I tear your soul from its moorings, do you know what we were before Kain spawned us?
Human.
Seraphon, Rahab, the antithesis of all we ever believed.
Does it matter? We were lost. He saved us.
Saved us? From what?
From ourselves.
Infused with Rahab's soul, you have overcome your former vulnerability to water's touch. Immersion in water will no longer dissolve your physical body, enabling you to swim to areas heretofore beyond your reach. Beyond the maelstrom of the Abyss, a subterranean tunnel leads northward to the clan territory of your brother Dumah. Endowed with Rahab's soul, you may swim to gain entry where your progress was previously impeded. Centuries past, your brother Dumah retreated with his clan into Nosgoth's northern wilderness. Empowered by the gift of Rahab's soul, seek out his mountain stronghold, but tread carefully. These frozen wastes have mysteries yet to disclose.
The two do battle, and Raziel uses his newfound telepathy to destroy the windows in Rahab's lair, exposing the vampire to sunlight and destroying him. Devouring his soul grants him the same imperviousness to water. With this newfound ability, he crosses the Lake of Dead, whose waters can no longer burn him, and enters the abandoned fortress of his brother Dumah. The ruined city is strewn with Dumah's children, and Raziel realizes that Dumah must have been killed. He suspects Kain at first, but the Elder God corrects him, stating that this was the work of vampire hunters. Exploring the city, Raziel eventually finds Dumah shackled to his throne, his heart pierced by stakes.
My brother Dumah, a powerful warrior in life. He would have burned with shame to have me find him here like a stuck pig.
Come to save my soul, prodigal brother.
Not to save it, but to take it. Your only salvation is release.
Unbound at last. I thank you, brother.
Your thanks are premature, Dumah. I have not forgotten whose hands bore me into the abyss.
The centuries in limbo have honed my strength. Not even Kain is my equal.
Even the strongest vampire is vulnerable.
We shall test your thesis, Raziel.
My bloodthirst has been superseded by an even darker hunger. I will consume your soul before this day is done.
Raziel revives his fallen brother, who thanks him, but Raziel refutes this gratitude. Still aggrieved that Dumah was one of the two that unquestioningly threw him into the abyss, he faced his brother in combat. Dumah challenges Raziel, who quickly finds that he cannot best him, and so lures him into a giant furnace to burn Dumah alive and devour his soul.
Consuming Dumah's soul empowers you to wind a constricting band of spectral energy around your enemies. This energy manifests itself in both the spectral and material realms, and in the physical world, it can be employed to manipulate otherwise immovable objects.
With 4 of his 5 brothers dead and no sign of the traitor Terrell, Raziel moves on to the final leg of his journey. He discovers the Oracle's Cave, where Kain first met Mobius the Time Streamer. Here, Raziel discovers the hidden Chronoplast, greatest of Mobius's time-streaming chambers. Exploring the subterranean network, he finds a series of portals which display scenes of the past and apparently the future. As he passes each one, Raziel becomes increasingly incredulous, believing that they are deceptions laid there by Kain to trick or manipulate him. The events depicted imply that all of his experiences have been predestined, and so too has his future. In the Chronoplast control room, Raziel finds Kain waiting for him.
At last. I must say I'm disappointed in your progress. I imagined you'd be here sooner. Tell me, did it trouble you to murder your brothers?
Did it trouble you when you ordered me into the abyss?
No. I had faith in you. In your ability to hate. In your self-righteous indignation.
Lies. You cannot have foreseen all of this.
Eternity is relentless, Raziel. When I first stole into this chamber centuries ago, I did not fathom the true power of knowledge. To know the future, Raziel. To see its paths and streams tracing out into the infinite. As a man, I could never have contained such forbidden truths. But each of us is so much more than we once were. Gazing out across the plains of possibility, do you not feel with all your soul how we have become like gods? And as such, are we not indivisible? As long as a single one of us stands, we are legion. And that is why, when I must sacrifice my children to the void, I can do so with a clear heart.
Very poetic, Kain. But in the end, you offer no more than a convenient rationalization for your crimes.
These chambers offer insight for those patient enough to look. In your haste to find me, perhaps you have not gazed deeply enough. Our futures are predestined. Mobius foretold mine a millennium ago. We each play out the parts fate has written for us. We are compelled ineluctably down preordained paths. Free will is an illusion.
I have been to the tomb of Zephon, Kain. Your dirty secret is exposed. How could you transform a Zephon priest into a vampire?
How could I not? One must keep his friends close, Raziel, and his enemies even closer. Can you grasp the absurd beauty of the paradox? We're the same. Zephon and vampire. With our holy wars, our obsession with Nosgoth's domination, who better to serve me than those whose passion transcends all notions of good and evil?
I will not applaud your clever blasphemy. The Zephon were saviors, defending Nosgoth from the corruption that we represent. My eyes are opened, Kain. I find no nobility in the unlife you rudely forced on my unwilling corpse.
You may have uncovered your past, but you know nothing of it. You think the Zephon were noble, altruistic? Don't be simple. Their agenda was the same as ours.
You are lost in a maze of moral relativism, Kain. These apparitions and portents. What game are you playing now?
Destiny is a game, is it not? And now, you await my latest move. You nearly had me, Raziel. But this is not where or how it ends. Fate promises more twists before this drama unfolds completely.
Be warned, Raziel. Once you cross this threshold, you are beyond my influence.
Raziel, Redeemer and Destroyer, Pawn and Messiah, welcome, time-spanned soul. Welcome to your destiny.
The game ends where Raziel comes face to face with the time streamer Mobius, whose machinations were only just unfolding.
Where time is but a loop, a loose stitch in the universal cloth, a streamer might seize upon a chance, a fatal slip, and plunge the fate of planets into chaos.
Soul Reaver is a very interesting and unique game. Following off the brilliance of its predecessor Blood Omen, the game's story explores ideas such as the nature of free will, the Faustian spirit, and the death and decay of civilizations. The main character of this game is Raziel, a fallen angel turned into a devourer of souls. His journey to exact revenge on his former brothers and Master Kain is unlike any other story that has ever been made in games since. One thing that always stands out when playing or viewing these games is the excellent writing, exposed through impeccable dialogue, riveting storytelling, and incredible voice acting talent. I remember that Dr. Bruce Charlton once said that the testament to how well something is written is whether it can be read aloud and still be pleasing to the outer ear. And surely all of the writings in this game are reminiscent of a Shakespearean play. Raziel's journey also has him face each of his former brothers, and each a representative of the followers of the system that can be seen in the modern day. Recalling an article by Morgoth, where he describes all of the archetypes of the system as various insect-like creatures, similarly, one can find parallels to draw with each of Raziel's brothers. Melchiah, the weakest of Kain's sons, is so frail that he could not sustain his body and soul with the power that he had inherited. He is representative of those who are not worthy to be in positions of power, but are granted those positions nonetheless. My brother recalled the former Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, and her transformation after her term in office, or the likes of George Soros. Zephon, the arachnoid, has cocooned himself in an abandoned cathedral. The irony of this is that humans built the holy site in order to eradicate the deformed vampires that were ravaging their world, and yet Zephon took it to be the nest for him and his brood. This could parallel the inversion of the church in modern day, who, rather than protect us from evil, seek to deliver it to us under the guise of being pious. Furthermore, Zephon himself, ever the coward, holed up in the spires of the church and devouring anything that was caught in its web, is so much like the elite class of today. Like Zephon, their appetites cannot be sated, and they will continue to devour and destroy from the comforts of their own cocoons. Rahab refused to denounce Kain, even after learning of his blasphemy and learning that they had once been Sarafan. He did not care for this revelation, and instead followed power unquestioningly and willingly. As Raziel said, he would maladapt to whatever this new power was, exemplified in his overcoming of the weakness of water. He represents those that are loyal servants to the system. Finally, there's Dumah, whose arrogance, believing that he was completely untouchable, led to his own demise, and the demise of his clan. Terrell would appear in Legacy of Kain Defiance, much later in the series, but it would become apparent that the priests in the Avernus Cathedral worshipped him as a god, even though he was a hideous and deformed monster. One thing I do enjoy is how Raziel is completely unfazed when faced against these monstrosities. They are Lovecraftian giants, and yet he faces them and insults them without fear, knowing that he would best them in the end. Another point I would like to mention is how the game explains in the onset that Raziel must adapt to face these enemies. Only wounds that impale or inflame are damaging to vampires, and sunlight and water are their other weaknesses. The game does nothing to remind you of these facts, and when faced with each of the boss fights, there are no tutorials or hints. Instead, one must find a solution all their own. Nothing in this game is spoon-fed, save for some hints given by the Elder God. Not even for puzzles do you get any explanation, there's only intuition. The game will not direct you in any way, something that isn't present in most modern day games, where it is significantly dumbed down. Kain in this installment represents much of the Faustian spirit, to overcome the impossible and to chase that dream of altering his destiny. It was remarked that Kain and Raziel were kin to Oedipus, not in the Freudian sense, mind you, but in the sense that they both wished to challenge their destinies and change it for the better. In the next installment, Soul Reaver 2, we'll better learn Kain's intentions, but essentially he wanted to abide by a different outcome. Rather than the outcome be heads or tails as dictated by the toss of a coin, he was looking for that singularly rare moment where the coin would land on its edge, producing an entirely unexpected but different outcome. We also get a glimpse of the duplicitous time streamer Mobius, who would play a very large role in both Soul Reaver 2 and the final game Defiance.
This, I deduced, must be the man himself, the time streamer, Mobius. He seemed not at all the impressive figure I had imagined from Kain's boasted exploits. And yet, even this cold image radiated a certain undeniable power.
Still, I must impress how unique and interesting this game is. The creators clearly had a vision when making this game, and it is evident in their storytelling and the world that they have built. There is clear passion and vision represented here, and I have not seen anything of the like in all my years of gaming. Most games are akin to a good movie or film, but this game surpasses that, and becomes close to being as good as a well-told book or novel. Next in the series we'll be looking at Soul Reaver 2, and continuing Raziel's journey as he pursues Kain through time, and learns more of the past and the future, and also of his destiny.